Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Grant Funding Opportunities to Unlock Smart and Secure Communities. I'm Michael Paddock, CEO of Grant's Office, and I want to welcome everyone to today's session. We've got a great session lined up for you, certainly a jam-packed session, so sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and we'll get started. Before we get too far into it, I want to very much thank Samsara for sponsoring today's session and making it possible for us to bring you this information. So thanks to Samsara for that. And we'll be hearing some more about Samsara solutions coming up in the next few minutes. So a few other housekeeping items for you. As many of you know, you can listen hands-free over your computer speakers or headphones. There's no need to dial in, but if you do become disconnected, you can go to the audio and video menu at the top of your screen to find alternative ways to connect to today's session. If you don't see the audio and video menu at the top of your screen, it might be hidden. There's a little caret at the very top of your screen that says hide menu bar or show menu bar, so you can find it that way. Also, you can ask questions using the question and answer interface at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Again, if you don't see it, look for those three dots at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen that will allow you to open up the Q&A interface. You can send in questions anytime during the course of today's session. We'll get to as many as we can, although I do have to say it's going to be a very busy the next hour. Will be pretty well packed with information. The session is being recorded and the replay will be available. I know Kate will be putting that information through the chat probably a couple of times, along with any additional resources. Will be on a page, ostensibly the same page where you registered for today's session. It'll just be switched over into a resources page, but I encourage you to check that out. Feel free to share that with anyone you think might find the information useful and interesting. And we'll get right started here. So we're going to start out with talking about connecting your operations with Samsara, a really innovative way to connect physical operations and make sure that they're both safe and secure. So to kind of provide a context for some of the things we're talking about, we talk about smart and secure communities. And then we'll get into an overview of grant funding, talk a little bit about kind of navigating the current shifting landscape of grant funding, another section on how to tell if a grant is technology friendly. We'll have some examples of some public safety grant programs and some transportation grant programs that all fit within that context of smart and secure communities, and then talk about some grant readiness tips and tricks before we finish up with Q&A. I'm joined by a great panel of speakers today. Sean McCann is the AVP for Public Sector at Samsara. Shannon Day is a Senior Grants Development Consultant here at Grant's Office, and Joe Phelan is a Grants Development Consultant here at Grant's Office also. So welcome to our speakers. We're very much looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. Okay, so let's jump right in with Sean McCann to tell us a little bit about connecting your operations with Samsara. Sean?
Yes, thank you, Michael. So for the next 10-15 minutes, what I'm going to talk about is just how we connect your operations with our Samsara platform. So Michael, if you go to the next slide, please. So at the end of the day, our mission as a company and as a platform is to improve the safety, efficiency, and sustainability of the operations that power our global economy. And from a public sector perspective, right, this is really relevant and really key to grant writing opportunities, because we do see grants for safety, efficiency, and sustainability out there today. Next slide, please, Michael. So let's talk about some of the outcomes that we work with our customers on. This isn't all the things we do, but these are some of the main ones. So our focus for public sector is all around safety and accident costs. And what we're able to do is provide safety measures within our platform, and I'll show you that as we move through the presentation, to help reduce the amount of incidents on the roads, reduce the amount of costs associated with those incidents. Another area where we focus is all around fuel costs and fuel consumption. Fuel is one of the biggest line items on any balance sheet for any particular government entity, and we're able to take a good look, or a very strategic look, at how fuel is being used throughout your operation, and we're able to drive costs and efficiency down, or efficiency up and cost down from a fuel perspective. And then the last piece that I'll talk about is all around asset utilization. We have customers in public sector with millions and millions of dollars worth of assets. Some of those assets become lost, some of them become stolen. And really what we're trying to do is track those assets so we're not taking those losses every single year, from an asset utilization perspective. And then towards the bottom are just some of the outcomes, right? So we look at things like recognition and retention as a very key piece of our safety program. And it's already very challenging to find and retain, great operators within the fleets we work with. So being able to provide positive recognition based on safe driving and, do things like that will ultimately allow you to retain these folks and keep them within the operation for an extended period of time. Then we also have training programs that we build on top of our safety platform that allows, drivers that may be good drivers, but they do need some coaching, throughout time to be able to, get to that safety record that we're looking for. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. And then finally, sustainability and compliance. That's a big buzzword today with our customers. And we're able to do things with our platform to show, how we could potentially, look at our fleet to become an EV fleet in the future. And then also, how do we stay compliant and deliver the best outcomes and the best services to our citizens? Next slide, please, Michael. So our platform is, essentially, built up of these points here. So, vehicle telematics is a very important piece of what we do. Video-based safety, which I spoke about a little bit. Site visibility is also another one. Smart trailers and equipment we talked about, with the asset tracking. Connected workflows. Connected workflows, I'll double click in just for a minute. A lot of our customers have a very arduous paper process, right, to go through their day. And what we're starting to do with our customers, which is really saving, millions and millions of dollars within a respective organization, is being able to digitize the workflows that they do from a paper process today. Right. So I'm not going to drill into that in the rest of the presentation, but I did want to mention it because it is, one of those important aspects and those big cost saving areas where we see with our customers. And then connected training, I talked about that a little bit. So really at the end of the day, your operation is going to be made up of, trucks, buses, cars, could be yellow iron, anything that technically, moves or has wheels, we can support with our platform. And if you look at, the gamut of public sector entities, you could have a fleet of 50 vehicles, a fleet of 10 or thousands, right? So, we work in all shapes and sizes of public sector. Next slide, please, Michael. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on is just, why we're so relevant in the market and why our platform is so powerful. So we are a robust platform that basically ingests 10 trillion data points. Now, with all that data, we can make very, very good decisions from an AI perspective. We also have 85 billion API calls and 70 billion miles traveled, meaning that 98% of the roads traveled daily in North America have Samsara devices phoning home and reporting data metrics. So, there's really no place within North America that we can't provide real-time data and value of your assets and your vehicles with our technology. Next slide, please, Michael. So we do partner with a number of public sector organizations. This is not all of the organizations we partner with, but it's just a snapshot. We focus on anywhere from state government, local government, transportation, education, both K-12 and higher education. So, any public sector entity with any type of fleet or assets is where we focus. And these are just a snapshot of some of our existing customers today. And we have over 1,000 customers. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about outcomes, right, what's the real impact? And this is where I think we tie this into the grant writing conversation is, for these examples, we've saved real hard costs and it drove efficiencies, right? So the first example is 50% reduction in accidents for Canyon School District. That's significant over a fleet of 500 buses. If you look at Edison Township, we saved $100,000 annually in maintenance costs. I'll talk a little bit about how we do that, but maintenance is also a big ticket item on any balance sheet. And then we talked about fuel. City of Sacramento, $300,000 saved in fuel costs. That was just in 1 year. Again, significant, right? That $300,000 can be reallocated towards something else to deliver better services to the citizens of the city of Sacramento. And then the last piece of it, or the last example here, is 1 million estimated tax dollars saved for the city of Allentown. Now, that comes from a gamut of things. It's fuel efficiency, it's maintenance costs, but their total savings was $1 million. So, the ROI on our technology and our platform is very, very fast. And this is, real world examples on how we did that. Next slide, please. And then last example, just from a use case perspective, is City County of Denver. They had rolled out a safety program, and really the goal is to make their drivers as safe as possible on the streets. And essentially, what they were able to do within a short period of time was drive down their safety events by 94% with our platform. The two biggest pieces of the safety events were harsh driving and distracted driving, and we were able to drive those down by 99% for harsh driving and 98% for distracted driving. And if you multiply that over, almost 2,000 vehicles, that's significant savings. And it's also very significant because now these drivers are much safer on the roads, and we're reducing accidents, fatalities, and all those things within the city and county of Denver. And that, again, is very relevant to the grant writing process. Next slide, please. The last piece I want to talk about is just our company in general. So we are a public company. We are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Our stock symbol is IOT. We grow 30% year over year. We have $1.3 billion of annualized revenue, and we have $1 billion of cash on the balance sheet. Now, why is that important? That is important because we take the revenue that we drive with our customers, and we reinvest that back in our business and back into our R&D. So we do more R&D investments than our competitor does in revenue at total. And what that means is there's always problems coming up. There's new pain points. There's new problems we need to solve. Because we innovate, we're able to work closely with our customers and continue to solve those problems to ultimately drive better outcomes for the constituents of that state, county, city, et cetera. So just wanted to touch on the company as a whole. Next slide, please. Okay. So I'm going to close with a quick demo. So this is not going to be a live demo. I did take some screenshots. They're fairly recent, but for the sake of time, I just wanted to do this with screenshots to make it a little bit easier for everyone to follow. So if you can jump into the next slide. So this is what our platform looks like. So when you open up our tool and you look in our platform, you're going to see basically your world, right? So you have some green assets. You have some assets that are dark. The green ones mean powered on, moving. Some are trailers, some are trucks, right? But you can kind of, hover over these and get all the information you need. And if I double click into one of those vehicles, next slide, please, you'll start to see what that looks like. So you can see, so this vehicle 59901 is traveling at 54 miles per hour. I've got a view of what the road conditions look like. And if I was doing this in real time, you would actually see that arrow actually traveling on the road in real time. The other thing you could do is you can also add layers, map layers as well. So we can look at traffic patterns. We can look at weather patterns. A great example of this would be if there's a storm coming in, and our drivers are going from point A to point B, let's take a look at that and reroute them around the storm so they potentially will have a safer experience, delivering whatever they're delivering at that point in time. Next slide, please, Michael. The other piece we continue to drill down is diagnostics. And this is really where we talk about reducing the amount of dollars you spend on maintenance and service, right? So here's an example. So I could see that the seatbelt's buckled, the engine state's running, engine hours, and then I could also see that the check engine light is on. So that may be a situation where if a check engine light pops on, you have to bring that, take that vehicle out of service and bring it in for, to have it looked at. But in this situation, you can continue to drill down and you can see, okay, there's some active faults there. Okay, we have a P1450 fault. Let's take a look at what that is. Now, there's a little button towards the bottom right of the screen that you can see. It kind of looks like a fingerprint. If you click on that, and that'll bring you to the next slide, you can actually ask our AI tool, Samsara Assistant, hey, how do I fix P1450? And it will actually spit out what the error code is and then some troubleshooting things you can do to clear that error code and have the check engine light come off. So in this case, this is a minor issue, right? So this is a situation where 9 times out of 10, we'd pull this vehicle out of service to get looked at, which there's a cost associated with that. In this situation, we can just call the driver and say, hey, next time you fuel up, can you just check the gas cap and make sure that's on properly? And that might wipe away this error code. So if you can compile this over thousands of vehicles, you can see that, these small little things all add up. And that's really how we drive the efficiencies with our platform. Next slide, please. The other piece is, safety, what I was talking about earlier. So, this is just basically an overall view of your safety profile for your organization. So you could see that, the harsh, like for example, harsh driving events, there was 5 total events last week. Okay, that's gone up 500%. So we could potentially look and just see how our fleet is operating overall from a safety perspective, and then we can do some coaching and put some corrective action in place. So if you take a look at the next slide, this is our safety inbox, right? And we could see we've had a couple events in the last 7 days. We've had a no seatbelt, we've had a rolling stop, right? So let's just examine the no seatbelt and just double click into that, which will be on the next slide. And we could see, yes, indeed, this individual, right, was driving with no seatbelt on, right? So this is a situation where we can apply some coaching. We can set off an alert and say, hey, you need to put your seatbelt on. So there's a bunch of actions you could take on this. But, when I talk about safety, it's really just, trying to monitor the drivers and make sure that they're doing things in the right manner. They're not driving distracted. They're not looking at their phone. Their seatbelts are on. They're not speeding, all those things. So that's basically how we handle safety with our platform. Let's go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit about fuel and energy. So an example here, when I was talking about fuel and what a big ticket item that is on any expense sheet, so this situation in the month of March, you could see that there's, 9,620 gallons were wasted on idling vehicles, right? If you multiply that number times how much it costs per gallon for fuel, like you could see your savings right there pretty significantly. So what we'll do is we'll look at the fleet and we'll look at vehicles that are idling, over extended periods of time. We'll set off alerts and we'll try to decrease the amount of idling, among other things, to help drive fuel savings and efficiency with your fuel and your energy. And then the last slide, again, EV suitability. So I talked about this briefly at the beginning, but this is an example. If you do have a grant that you're writing for, EV suitability, once we are in your fleet and we have the data, we can make good decisions on which parts of the fleet are suitable for EV, meaning that, based on the driving patterns, based on charging stations within the area, all those things need to be considered when you want to, take a traditional, gas powered fleet or diesel powered fleet and turn that into an EV fleet. So in this case, 72% of the fleet, based on the data that we have, is suitable for electric cars. So that's it for me. I want to turn it back over to you, Michael. I just wanted to thank everyone for their time. And if there's any opportunity, if you want to double click and drill down more into the Samsara platform, please let us know. We'd be happy to do so. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Sean. Really a great example of leveraging a wide range of different technologies to connect everything together and provide really a simplified view of an entire operation. So thanks very much for that. Okay, so now we're going to turn it over to Shannon Day to take us through an overview of grant funding, and she'll be joined by Joe Phelan as well. So Shannon, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sean. That was really cool. So we are going to start by looking at the various sources of grant funding for public agencies. But before we do that, it's important to acknowledge the current status of federal grant funding. Many federal grant programs are temporarily paused while the various agencies review their notice of funding opportunities, or NOFOs, to ensure that they and the language within them align with the present administration's priorities. Grants Office is proactively monitoring these developments, so you can check out our website. You can find all sorts of resources, including a continuously updated blog post. We have done grants casts on the subject, and we may be doing more grants casts in the future. So it's a good idea to check out our website for any updates, because maintaining awareness of the status of federal grants is very important, because it's the largest source of grant funding for public sector organizations. When we talk about grants and grant funding, we're talking about monies that are offered to eligible parties to accomplish projects that are in alignment with a particular funder's desired outcomes, and those outcomes vary greatly. There are 3 main categories. There are federal funders, state funders, and foundation funders. The largest by far in terms of overall funding available comes from the federal government. So right a little over $700 billion a year is available from 26 federal grant-making agencies through a variety of competitive, entitlement, pass-through, or cooperative agreement grant opportunities. Federal grants tend to be much more competitive in that they draw from a nationwide pool of applicants. And in exchange for that, they are larger award sizes, but they also have more complex application processes. Next down, we have state agencies. These, in contrast, tend to be a little less competitive. Applicants are limited to a specific state, and the application process is usually a little less involved. But funds tend to be a little more limited. So it really comes down to the state, how plentiful those funds are. For example, some states invest heavily in public safety grants, some less so. Federal and state agencies collectively provide public grant funding, meaning that they are financed through public tax dollars. Consequently, these grants are subject to regulations governing their utilization. And finally, rounding out the available grant funding landscape are private grant funders. These can be corporations, their families, even individuals, shared interest, or community foundations. These foundation grant opportunities really run the gamut from small to large in award size. They're just as varied in terms of competitiveness. Generally, we find that foundation is primarily for nonprofits and 501c3s. While there is some foundation funding out there for public entities, it's really not common. So you'll want to keep your eyes open for any local foundations that may align with what your agency is trying to accomplish. I do also want to briefly address, because you may be seeing stories pop up in the news, that the Department of Justice is threatening to withhold funding from so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. There's no legal definition of what constitutes a sanctuary jurisdiction, but unofficially, it's a state, a county, a city, a town that has policies to protect undocumented immigrants. We did see this happen back during the first Trump administration in 2016, with federal funds being tied up in courts, but those funds were eventually released. So when we talk about state grant funding, we're not only talking about grants funded through the state budget, as I mentioned, those vary pretty greatly, but we're also talking about federal pass-through funding. These latter grants, I'll talk about one or two later on, but they're programs that are federally funded, but applicants apply through their state, ergo pass through. So those are the ones that may be in danger of being tied up in courts. That said, today we're going to focus primarily on federal funding. I'm going to touch a little bit on state opportunities so you can get an idea of what may be available for your agencies. The top funding agencies for public safety initiatives are through the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. Some of the funding offices within these agencies include the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the Office on Violence Against Women, the Office of Community-Oriented Policing, FEMA. There are quite a few others. The DOJ focuses funding for criminal justice initiatives like law enforcement, and DHS provides funding for other first responder agencies like fire and EMS, in addition to law enforcement agencies. So, how can we tell if a grant is friendly for your Samsara needs? Really, you want to understand that grants broadly divide into two categories: those specifically for a technology solution and those for every other purpose. It's important to understand that grants explicitly funding technology are pretty rare. So a customer seeking funding for police dash cams would have a hard time finding grants solely for that product if they set out Googling grants for dash cams, for example. This is because grant funders focus on the desired social impact rather than the specific technological means to achieve it. Far more common, as you can see, are technology-friendly grants. Grant funders prioritize projects with a holistic approach, such as increasing traffic safety utilizing dash cams and license plate readers, rather than solely funding the technology itself. While there are occasionally grants, as I mentioned, that are created to fund specific technology solutions like body-worn cameras, they are very rare. By overlooking those other grants on the right of your screen, the grants that don't explicitly mention technology but will definitely fund it within a comprehensive project, you may be leaving funding on the table. So we aim to prevent this by revealing the wider range of tech funding possibilities. So we encourage you to think creatively about how your needed solution can be part of a wider project. How can the solution fit in as just another tool in your toolbox to do the work that you do? Along with the other things you may need, like training, as Sean mentioned, contractual services, staffing, supplies, etc. So you're building a holistic project. So this strategic approach significantly expands your grant opportunities and increases your chances of securing funding. Always remember, grants fund projects, not just products. So understanding how certain types of grants support specific technology solutions, how can we really determine if a grant is tech-friendly? When looking at potential grants that can fund technology, one of the most important steps you can take is to check the grant's guidance. This usually comes in the form of a request for proposals or RFPs. Sometimes they're called NOFOs, sometimes they're called RFAs. As with most fields, grants love their acronyms. Anyway, it's application guidance. So you want to review this document for information such as deadlines, funding information, application instructions, budget information, whatever other information you may need to know. What we really want to know, if the grant is tech-friendly, we usually check the allowable or unallowable expenses for the grant. Funders are usually pretty specific about what the grant can or cannot be used for. Grants that list specific allowable technologies to be purchased or even installed can be considered tech-friendly. We should also read between the lines when it comes to the priorities of the program. If we have a specific project in mind that can utilize technology, it's imperative that we make sure our project's goals and missions are fully aligned with the program's objectives. Critically and objectively assessing whether your technology directly addresses the program's intended outcomes will help your project be successful. And we can also get a better sense of if a grant is truly technology friendly by looking at what sort of projects the program has funded in previous cycles. These past funded projects can usually be seen on the funder's website. Sometimes this information may not be available. It really depends on the grant or the funder. We also want to look at the program has leveraged technology solutions in the past to fulfill its mission through these past projects. If those past funded projects are not readily available, you can always reach out to the funder directly or even submit a Freedom of Information Act to request that information. So in a little bit, as Michael mentioned, Joe is going to talk to you about grants that support smart transportation initiatives. But before that, I want to talk about some public safety opportunities and the public safety component of transportation safety, because interoperability is key. So the first grant here is one of those pass-through grants I mentioned. It's the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, or JAG. It is the primary provider of federal criminal justice funding to state and local jurisdictions, providing the critical funding necessary to support a range of program areas, including law enforcement, prosecution and courts, prevention and education, corrections, drug treatment, technology improvement programs, etc. JAG funding is available all across two funding areas. There is JAG Local and JAG State. Both programs are funded through a formula. States and localities receive funds based on their resident population and on violent crime data reported to the FBI. Based on this information, local governments may receive formula funding anywhere from $10,001 and up, depending on that formula. And if a local government is on the local list, they apply directly to the Bureau of Justice Assistance each year. If your jurisdiction doesn't receive a direct JAG allocation, you may be eligible to receive JAG funding through your state. Each state designates a single state administering agency, or SAA, to administer JAG funding and other criminal justice funding. States are required to pass through a certain percentage of their annual JAG allocation to local jurisdictions. This percentage varies by state. And otherwise, states have a pretty good amount of flexibility with how JAG funds are used, which means there may be a lot of variation from state to state and even from year to year. For example, a state may opt to distribute funds to multi-jurisdictional task forces annually, every year. That's what they do with their JAG funding. Or a state may opt to host a competitive JAG program for law enforcement equipment one year, and then distribute formula funds for community outreach the next. So you'll want to keep an eye on what your state is doing. States are also required to open their JAG plans for public review and comment. So you also want to make sure you are reviewing that and advocating for your department and for your community's needs. As I mentioned, state funding for public safety and first responders really varies a lot. I've provided a few examples here to demonstrate what I talked about regarding how to determine the tax friendliness of a grant. First, the ELETSIB, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's how I say it. So Illinois, please correct me. The ELETSIB camera grant program, it's an easy one. It's right in the name, but what kind of cameras? So that's where checking the program page, the application guidance, looking for more information, that's where the importance comes in. For example, this program used to be just for police body cameras, but they recently expanded it to include dash cameras. Next, the Arkansas Department of Public Safety equipment grant is a little less specific, but it is clearly for equipment or technology. So again, you want to look at the guidance and say, hey, what kind of equipment can we get with this grant? What kind of technology solutions will this grant fund? And then finally, the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, traffic safety grants. Every state, I want to mention, every state does get pass-through funding for traffic safety law enforcement initiatives. This is not that. This is a state-funded program, but it's similar. So the traffic safety grants in Washington, in the title, it doesn't mention equipment or technology. So it mentions traffic safety, that social outcome that we talked about. It may fund the equipment you need to, again, attain that outcome. And in this case, looking at the grant guidance, we see that it will fund traffic enforcement equipment, including LiDARs, radars, in-car video systems, rear antenna, scanners, printers, and the like. The equipment law enforcement needs to do their job when it comes to traffic safety. So on the right of our screen, I've provided a couple of resources to get you started in how you can find grant opportunities in your particular state, because there are 50 states, there are 50 ways to go about it. But you can start with those SAAs that I mentioned. They administer pass-through grants through the Department of Justice and through the Department of Homeland Security. The verbiage is slightly different, but they're both called SAAs. You can start with them. These agencies usually also administer state-funded public safety opportunities, so they're a really good place to start. You want to find your agencies, join their email subscription service or listserv, so you know when a grant opportunity is available. We also find a lot of state opportunities in places we wouldn't initially think of when we're thinking about public safety funding. So you want to get creative. Think, I hate to say it, outside the box. So in addition to the above agencies, think about departments of commerce. We see a lot of public safety funding through departments of commerce. We also see departments of transportation. That's a little easier. We also see departments of conservation and environmental impact for things like fire grants. So again, think creatively. Those are just a few off the top of my head. You know your states better than I do. So that's a great place to start, and hopefully it can get your brain juices flowing thinking about state funding. And finally, I haven't forgotten, I do want to talk about fire and EMS response. The Assistance to Firefighters Grant, or AFG, can be used for the purchase of fire trucks and ambulances, which may be equipped with emitters that communicate with receiving devices on traffic signals. This is referred to either as traffic priority or preemption is the more common verbiage. When an emitter is activated, the device causes the traffic lights in the path of that emergency response vehicle to immediately cycle and grant the right of way in the direction the vehicle is traveling. These preemptive signals allow emergency vehicles to get to scenes faster. They clear the path for the vehicle. It can also improve safety by giving a red light to all other lights at that intersection, so no traffic impedes an emergency vehicle or, God forbid, causes a traffic accident. And clearly, departments purchasing vehicles equipped with this preemption technology want to work with their local Department of Transportation to ensure that this preemption technology actually exists within the municipality or is planned. So this is where I will turn it over to Joseph, who will take over talking about those transportation initiatives. And I thank everyone.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate that valuable information. For today, we'll speak about four different programs that are transportation related, whether it's rail or transit or just surface transportation. These are four programs that are going to come out in the next 10 months or so. We're still kind of in the waiting game as far as when future rounds of funding will be announced from the DOT or the Federal Highway Administration or even the Department of Homeland Security. However, we did actually get some clarity about this specific program, Safe Streets and Roads for All, just this week. We anticipate that a NOFO to be released sometime this month before the end of the month for the next round of funding under the Safe Streets and Roads for All. There's still a little bit over a couple billion left in the Safe Streets and Roads for All, which was part of the IIJ back in the back in the end of 2021 when it was passed, and we've seen it be funded in fiscal years 22, 23, as well as 2024. As far as the time frame, it looks like the deadline is going to be June 26th, 2025 for this program. How the NOFO will read as far as the different aspects of the grant program hasn't been clear yet. However, we do anticipate the NOFO to be released sometime by the end of this month. But the goal of this program is really to help improve the overall roadway safety through various initiatives. Action plans are the root of it. So those planning action plans that any applicant that would hope to receive funding for any type of demonstration activities would be required to have an action plan in place. This is open to all types of local governments, metropolitan planning organizations, tribal governments, counties, transit agencies, and the like. So yeah, as I mentioned, there are two project types. So the planning and demonstration grants, those are going to be those action plans. And then within those action plans, you're allowed to pilot various technologies to help improve the safety benefits of that technology for the community. They're basically technologies that are commercially available, but they're not yet adopted in the community. So there are a ton of examples, whether it's variable speed limits, speed safety cameras installations, retrofit in public transit with dash cameras or intelligent speed assist adaptive lighting, adaptive signal timing, safety warnings for one-way driving alerts, intelligent transportation systems, vehicle to infrastructure technologies. So there's a ton of eligible technology for these safe streets and roads for all. The implementation, the demonstration activities under the plan and demonstration grants, as well as the implementation grants. So there's definitely more. The larger grants for the implementation exist, and there are a ton of eligible technologies to kind of help promote the adoption of innovative technologies and strategies in order to promote safety, as well as to protect vulnerable road users in high traffic areas where where commercial medical vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists interact are going to be eligible for those implementation grant activities. So the award amount is going to range from 100,000 to 25 million. So it's a pretty wide gap. However, the implementation grants are going to be the higher, up to 25 million, where the plan and demonstration grants are going to be the lower amount. And there is a 20% cost share required for Safe Streets Roads for All. This is a program that has seen a lot of activity as far as successful applications. The action plan is an important aspect of it. You need to have a plan in place to provide some implementation of these technologies in order to receive funding. But we have seen a lot of success with applicants over the last few years, and there should be some additional rounds of funding for the Safe Streets and Roads for All moving forward. There was, with the new administration, as far as some of the equity and climate mentions in NOFOs, that's what we're kind of waiting to see exactly how the NOFO will be changed this year. However, the goal of this program really is just to improve roadway safety. So there's a ton of eligible technology that's going to be included with that. The next program comes from the Department of Homeland Security, and it's the Transit Security Grant Program. And this program is eligible, or those who are eligible for this program are those public transportation agencies that serve historically eligible urban area security initiative jurisdictions. So think about the major metropolitan areas throughout the country. Those those agencies, public transportation agencies, are eligible to apply for the Transit Security Grant Program. And basically, any type of intra-city bus or commuter bus, ferries, or passenger rail. And these funds will allow to protect this critical surface transportation infrastructure, as well as the public through various cybersecurity initiatives, as well as public security upgrades. So that's the focus of this program is pretty self-explanatory as far as what it will fund with cybersecurity, as well as physical security upgrades. In 2024, there was just under 84 million that was made available under this program, with applications due in June. And we followed a similar path as last year, as this year, as far as the budget being passed from the federal level. So that was a little bit of a delay last year with the passage of the Department of Homeland Security aspect of the budget, which had that June 24th, 2024 deadline. So we do anticipate a similar deadline for this program at near the end of June. However, more clarity will exist in the next couple weeks, next couple months, depending on where things stand for the Department of Homeland Security. But we do anticipate the same amount of funding that's going to be available, and then no cost share that's going to be required for the Transit Security Grant Program. And then in relation to the Transit Security Grant Program, there's also the Port Security Grant Program, which actually opens up the pool for more applicants. Port authorities are eligible to apply, as well as state and local government agencies, but facility operators are also eligible to apply. So for-profit organizations can take advantage of these funds. But it's really focused on the port-wide risk management and protection of those critical surface transportation infrastructure from various forms of terrorism, major disasters, as well as emergencies. So to help enhance the cybersecurity of the port, or to help the protection of soft targets, crowded places for the port. And last year there was 90 million that was available, and there is a cost share for this program. There's 25% match for public sector applicants, and then for private sector applicants, it's going to be a 50% cost share required. And as similar to the Transit Security Grant Program, We're looking at a June 2025 deadline. Last year was towards the end of June, so we do anticipate a similar time frame. That's our best guess as of now. However, that could change. We'll definitely learn more information in the coming weeks. And then the last grant program comes from the DOT, Department of Transportation, is the Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development, otherwise known as BUILD. This is actually, it was renamed BUILD. It used to be called RAISE. It's been called Tiger in the past as well, but now it's called BUILD. And there's a deadline earlier this year. And basically these grants go towards all types of transportation infrastructure projects, with the real focus on having significant local or regional impact. These grants are going to be capital projects. There's also money out there for planning projects as well. But for the purpose of this conversation, we can focus on the capital projects side of things. And you're going to have highway or bridge projects, public transportation projects, passenger and freight rail transportation projects, and then port infrastructure investments. And there's a minimum amount for rural areas, which is a million. Each project needs to be at least $1 million for rural areas, and then $5 million for urban areas. And this program definitely encourages innovation. It's definitely innovative technology it has to have at least one component of the project needs to have innovation. That's part of the merit criteria for the BUILD grant program. So it could be improved safety using advanced driver assistance systems on public transit vehicles. Any type of sensors to kind of monitor real-time conditions of pavement quality, crosswalks, transit headways, digitize various curb management to optimize use across different purposes and modes, detection systems on railroads to target and deter trespassing. It's pretty widespread as far as what type of technologies are eligible under the BUILD program. We do anticipate this grant program returning towards the end of this year with a deadline in early 2026. That's what we've seen in recent years, since especially considering this program has been adjusted to reflect the current administration's priorities as far as removing some of the equity piece that the RAISE grant program focused on, and climate as well. And then as far as eligibility goes, any type of state and local government is going to be eligible. Tribes, transit agencies, port authorities, counties, they're all eligible to apply for BUILD. And with that, I'll go to the next slide, which is focused on grant readiness tips and tricks. So those were some of the grant programs that exist right now that Shannon and I spoke about, and that kind of touch on the various safety and smart city initiatives that an organization would like to receive funding for. But how you go about that is another thing entirely. So I definitely wanted to leave you with some tips and tricks before we pass it back to Michael to talk through some questions that may come in during our presentation. So to get your organization grant ready, it's pretty important to kind of first start with just why you need funding. Know your need. Why are you grant seeking? Is there a specific piece of equipment, a program, or project you wish to finance? And how will grant funding help you achieve these objectives? So knowing your need will allow you to know exactly where to look for, whether it's a federal program, a state program, the size of what your need is. That might determine, as Shannon mentioned, sometimes the federal grants are going to be larger in scope than the state grants. So what your need is and how you establish that is going to go a long way with knowing what grants to pursue and how to approach that grant application and all those things as well. The next is to identify team members. To assemble the project team is going to be very essential because sometimes these grants can be complex, as Shannon mentioned. Some of them are going to be 30, 40, 50 pages worth of narrative. There might be a benefit cost analysis, especially if it's a Department of Transportation grant or a Federal Highway Administration grant. So the number of people that need to be involved in the actual grant seeking team is going to be pretty substantial and going to be important and imperative to your application. So definitely assemble your grant seeking team early in the process. Assign various responsibility roles and make sure that there's accountability in place for a more seamless process. Definitely consider building in checks and balances for large or important pieces of the application. That's definitely going to be an important aspect. The next is a plan. So establishing a plan is essential for a successful grant seeking endeavor. So be sure to include time into the schedule for when things don't go quite to plan. Like website portals being out of commission for a period of time. Someone calling out sick, or someone is on vacation during the time, because grants do it's a pretty quick process. It might be a 6 to 8 weeks depending on what grant you're applying for. So the process it's a quick turnaround. So you have to be sure you're accounting for all those potential mishaps or schedule conflicts along the way. And then complete registration. So as you'll see with a lot of different grants, there are different types of requirements to be registered for various federal or for state authorizations. So making sure that you're up to date with your various portals and registrations. That goes a long way as well. Especially you can do that as soon as possible when it comes to making sure that you have everything in order to apply for the grant when the application does come out. That's one of the things that we definitely are learning right now with the current review of the applications. We don't know exactly when these grant programs are gonna open. However, there are things you can do right now and then to be prepared for when they do open, and making sure that all the registrations are complete. It will go a long way. And then once you have those registrations done, make sure that you have all the required documents. So a lot of the federal grants are going to have these various standard forms, lobbying forms, budget forms, those types of things. So making sure that that's something that you can access whenever. You don't have to wait for the NOFO to be released. You can look into the history of the program that you're looking for funding, and have that information ready, those forms filled out well in advance of when the NOFO is released. So those are just a few tips to get your organization grant ready. We definitely wanted to leave you with some more information as far as getting yourself grant ready for your organization. And with that, I'll pass it to Michael.
Great, thanks very much, Sean, Shannon, and Joseph. Great presentations, and I did forewarn everybody that we have a lot of content to get through today, but we do have a little time for questions. First question that seems to be coming through quite a bit is, will the recording be available? And if you look at the chat, you see that Kate has added the link to the recording and where that will be available at the close of business today, along with any other resources, the slides, for example, but also the replay of today's session. So that will be available at the close of business today. Okay, other questions? This one probably for Shannon. How does DOGE impact some of these funding sources that we've been talking about?
So DOGE is a new department. When we're looking at federal grants specifically, there are mandatory and discretionary grants. I think where we're going to see the most impact is with those discretionary grants, because it's in the name. Department heads have more discretion in what those types of grants will fund, what their priorities will be, etc. Mandated grants are exactly that. They are mandated through an act of Congress usually. Those are a lot harder to change because, again, they are mandated by Congress. So while DOGE is a department at the federal level, Congress has the power of the purse. So again, we're going to wait and see what the priorities are as these grants start to reopen. But I don't foresee a whole lot of change with the overarching goals of the programs, especially on the public safety side of things. And also, as Joe mentioned, on the transit side of things. Public safety and transportation are bipartisan issues. I don't even want to say they're issues, So I don't foresee a whole lot of change. We're mostly going to see change in some of the language, I think. Hopefully that helps answer your question.
It does, thanks. And I want to let everyone know too that we're going to be doing a special conversation, continuing the conversation around the 2025 continuing resolution that's going to extend federal funding through the end of the federal fiscal year 2025. So we'll be doing that in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. Just a 30-minute conversation, maybe 40-minute conversation that kind of goes through what is going to be included from a funding perspective. We're seeing most of that funding maintained for the remainder of 2025 up through September 30th, 2025. And then we'll see kind of how things shake out as the budget process begins once again for fiscal year 2026. Okay, so next question that came in, this one's I think more for Joseph. Are school district bus systems eligible for the Transit Security Grant Program?
Yeah, unfortunately, they are not eligible, and a lot of the federal transit grant programs you wouldn't be eligible for from a school district perspective, but they definitely are some grants out there for school buses. So yeah, definitely not the transit security one, but there are definitely grant programs out there that could fund school buses.
Okay, great. And at the federal and state level, would you say those?
Yes,
grants?
definitely. Yeah.
Great. Okay, other questions that have come in. Oh, actually, this one came in for Sean. If we wanted to reach out to Samsara, can we get an email address or other contact information? Is there someone, Sean, they should reach out to if they want to get a demo of the Samsara solution?
Sure, absolutely. You can reach out to me. My email is SEAN. I'll put this in the chat also.
Thanks.
.McCann, MCCANN @samsara.com. I'll put that in the chat as well. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thanks, Kate.
He's on it. Great. Thanks, Kate. All right. Terrific. Thanks. And that's all the questions we have, unless anyone has any additional questions. I want to very much thank our panelists, Sean McCann, Shannon Day, and Joseph Phelan, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us and helping us better understand this topic. Big thanks to Samsara for sponsoring today's session, making it possible to bring you this information. And to all of you, I want to thank you for your participation and for your attention in today's session. I hope you found this a valuable use of your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on a future webcast. Have a great day, everybody.